So just to introduce what we're doing, Darren and I are doing a series of videos which basically explains to you how nature works. In the first video, we looked at how modern science has completely lost its way. It did so at the time of Newton, and it decided that physics was going to explain everything, but that never happened. And the deception which has been going on, certainly in the last century, is that physics doesn't explain the geometries of molecules, the fact that the solar system is a clock, a snowflake, and we've got a very, very good pattern physicist stating why physics can't explain the snowflake. The physics is uniform. It has no prejudice to sit together in one direction over another. That's Frank Close. So how could it possibly explain the snowflake? It explains a raindrop, which is just a uniform clump, but that's it. So never mind chemistry and biology and genetics and the weather and everything else. Physics doesn't do it. But we are constantly fed information which implies that it doesn't. It's all sorted out. You said earlier, Darren, didn't you, that you thought it was all sorted out because of the program?
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, and you just assume as a member of the public that the scientific community has got the answers to life. It's like the missing link is sometimes it's.
That's a good analogy. That's a really good analogy, because the link which has been missing, which wasn't available to people like Albert Einstein, was the experiments which revealed the theory of chaos. And because we've had this idea that physics was going to explain everything, people have tried to put chaos into physics. Well, that doesn't work, because classical physics, as we heard in the last video, is by definition predictable. Chaos is by definition unpredictable, complete contradiction. So what we looked at in the last video was that the universe has to be driven by mathematical rules which explain physics, chemistry, biology, genetics, virology, chaos. Chaos is right at the bottom as a pair and a triplet with classical physics, which includes relativity, quantum physics, which is arithmetic, and fractal rules of chaos, which means periodic repeated patterns. So it's as simple as that. I've got a pair and a triplet at the base of every system of matter or information, and that's based on the first two prime numbers, which build all the number system and build geometry.
Yeah, which is two and three, isn't it? The first two prime numbers. Yeah.
Yes. It's very important that the first number isn't one, because you can't have one of anything building something else. You can have something that comes in two parts and each bit makes the other. So light can cool down into matter, and matter can change back into light. Now that's not taught anywhere. But antimatter and matter, if they meet, they change into 100% light. And a photon can cool down into a quark, which is a piece of matter. So light can cool down into matter. Well, that's a really important thing which is not taught in school. The standard way of teaching science in school is that physics might explain everything, but as soon as you open a child's science book, all the matter is in different chapters. No relationship between them whatsoever.
Right.
Unless you flip over and say mathematics is driving everything. And there are loads of videos now on YouTube showing the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, all over nature. And here's the sentence of logic. If you see the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence in animals and plants, it can only have got there if the matter was using the mathematics which makes the patterns. They don't come from physics. If the Fibonacci sequence came out of physics, Einstein would have showed you it in 5 minutes, and he didn't.
Okay.
So we are living in a period of scientific madness where science makes no sense whatsoever. And yet all the matter in nature is sitting in the periodic table, which is all organized and sequential. So it stands to reason that nature must have a pattern which shows that it is all common sense, a mathematical pattern based upon a pair, first prime number, and a triplet. So the two parts of physics and chaos as a triplet can build everything else, just as three basic colors build all the other colors.
Right, okay.
Simple as that. So what Darren and I are going to do is just keep making these videos to document the period in history when ordinary people, that's me and Darren, who are not famous in any way, worked out how human beings crawled out of the rocks and water of the early earth and came to be here. And it wasn't done in the top university. It was done by people just being sensible.
Sat in the park.
Sat in the park. There's a couple of plunkers in the park. Changing history. So that needs to be documented because it's such an important moment in time when ordinary people get to find out in very, very simple, almost childishly simple terms, how they came to be and what their part in nature is.
Yeah, and this is when this comes back to the pairs and the triplets again, doesn't it? Because I'm not from a scientific background at all, but and I don't understand a lot of the scientific terms that me and you speak about. But when you explain it in pairs and triplets, and that this goes right up to space, right down to the proton. It's just so easy for someone like me to understand. It just makes things so simple, which is because if I'd have met you the first time and I couldn't quite grasp what you was trying to say, I probably would have seen you the next time in the park and just completely ignored you and thought, this man's a madman. He's speaking to me about, but something really resonated in me with what you were saying. And I'd just like to say to the audience, just give this stuff a chance, because like this stuff is the future of humanity, and like it's once it gets out, it's going to get out big time. So
you get the feeling that once it gets a platform, it's just going to go boom through humanity, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's what everybody's waiting for out there, but we're just documenting almost what it feels like to have this information, and you can't tell people because they just think you're a madman.
Oh, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Like I've been trying to pass on the information to big YouTubers. So I know you've been trying with journalists and stuff, and like for you to be working on it for 30 years. I can't understand the frustration you've been going through, because I've known about this information for a few weeks. No one will listen to me, and it's just so frustrating.
It's like trying to give somebody AIDS.
Yeah.
The reason is that we're not famous. So the brain says it couldn't possibly be a pair of plunkers in the park telling Brian Cox how it's done.
Yeah.
And he pretends that science explains the snowflake, and it doesn't. So we're calling you out on that one, Brian.
Yeah, but I'd just like to say I want front row seats when this intellectual boxing match takes place.
Yes,
so,
it has to take place, isn't it? It's the one that everybody wants to see.
Of course.
Where somebody educates somebody who's right at the top and just tells them how our snowflake comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's what because when you think of a snowflake, pairs and triplets, it's got 6 sides, 2 and 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and carbon. All of life is based upon carbon, which has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. So that's not coincidence. I mean, there's loads of videos now showing all this mathematics is all related. And if you try and explain reality with physics. None of it's related. It's all in separate departments. So you can see the scale of the mistake that has been made. And I'd just like to quote the physicist John Wheeler, who used to teach Richard Feynman, when he said, surely underneath it all, there must be something so simple and so beautiful that when we find it in a decade, a century, or a millennium, we'll all turn to each other and say, how can it have been otherwise? How can we have been so stupid?
It blows my mind. Like, I just, what has, like, I know it's not like the scientific community's fault, but it just makes me wonder, what is the point of universities and stuff like that when, I just find it frustrating. It's just frustrating.
Well, I mean, what's the point of building the Large Hadron Collider, the biggest machine that's ever been built on the Earth? Billions of pounds.
Yeah.
You found the Higgs boson, which is of no use to mankind whatsoever.
Right.
Where's the payback?
Yeah.
I mean, all right, who cares about the Higgs boson in your daily life? Does it give you a health service? Better education? No, it doesn't give us anything. So we seem to have gone too far in trying to just produce more physics for its own sake, when we don't even have the physics to explain the snowflake. That's pathetic, isn't it, really?
It is really. And I get the feeling it was just built for bragging rights, me. But...
Well, it was, yeah, because there's always been a competition between the Americans and the Europeans to build the largest collider.
Right.
So, very good. We've done it. We've won. But what have we won? We don't seem to have. We just seem to have lost our way. There's lots of physicists now who are standing up and saying we've lost our way. One is Sabine Hossenfelder. Another is Dr. Alexander. I can't pronounce his name. It's sort of difficult. Alexander Unzinker, who's made a lot of videos saying, look, physics doesn't make any sense because the standard model, which sits underneath the periodic table, is just a complete mess. There's no internal patterns to it. Whereas the periodic table, it's all ordered and sequential. So that makes sense to the brain, but the standard model isn't. Because you're trying to arrange it using the physics and you can't do it. If you do it arranged on the pairs and triplets in mathematics, it all falls into place. And later we'll be able to show people that. So that's what's coming up, is a new version of the standard model that's all symmetrical and contains gravity. And it's simple, simple, simple. So that needs to be documented, that is ready to give to the world. But when you try and give it to people, they turn it down without looking at it and say, you couldn't possibly have that. That's like saying to the judge in the court, I'm not going to look at any of the evidence, but we'll convict him anyway.
Yeah. And this is because a lot of people don't like, and this is only what I've learned from you, which people feel threatened by this information,
Yes,
so
they do, yeah.
A lot of physicists have been, even though they probably have a feeling and they know that there's more to be answered, they feel like their life's work's threatened by this stuff, so they just instantly they're closed-minded to it.
Yes, yeah. Now there are doctors and professors at the local university who do sit down and look at it, and then afterwards they say, this is all correct and verifiable, but I can't help you in any way because I can't speak out at the university. So freedom of speech has been lost.
Right.
And that's bottom line. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to start to show you all these patterns in nature, that it's all based on just pairs and triplets. It's very simple. Anybody can learn it, and it's useful because it means it applies to human societies and human economies. We can give you and the politicians that information so we can build safe and fair, trustworthy societies based on truth.
and this means an equal and fair society, won't it? And also the tools to have no more wars, like literal peace on earth.
Yes, yes, but you will have more and more natural disasters like viruses, because as the population density goes up and access to travel, viruses now quickly spread around the globe. So that's going to be a constant problem.
Right.
So we just go from one kind of destruction to another. We go from self-destruction to being a common system of matter that wants to stay alive.
Right.
And we have to value everybody as an equal desire to stay alive, because all systems, our systems of matter, just want survival of the self, survival of the genes, and survival of the group. Everybody's born with an innate survival of the group instinct, which means that we're all born racist and favor our group over everybody else's, and you can't switch that off. You can overcome it with high-level thinking, which understands what a human being is and knows that everybody's got the same feelings, so they all have an equal right not to be attacked by other groups.
And this is what springs to mind when you mentioned this is like the Great Awakening that's been mentioned. We were speaking before the video started, and
Yes. So in 1964, Richard Feynman predicted that the next great awakening of the human intellect would give us access to what turbulence is, what frogs, musical composers, and morality are, without having to refer them to coming into being by a god, so that we can all have strong opinions either way. We now know how turbulence and laminar flow have a common explanation. Physics, chemistry, and biology have a common explanation. And there are parts of the universe which have no explanation in mathematical terms, and that means that nobody has access to them. Nobody can claim to understand them above all others. So there isn't one group or religion which understands how the universe works above everybody else. Nobody has access to the last little bit.
No, yeah, and that's human consciousness, isn't it? That
Yes.
falls into that category.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not explainable by mathematics, physics, or anything.
Yeah. So let's just do the parent triplet for a human being. Number one, I'm an object. I behave according to the laws of physics. That means I fall over if I trip.
Yeah.
Number two, I'm an animal. I obey the laws of physics and the laws of biology and genetics.
Yeah.
But number three, I can think consciously outside of my own physical presence in a realm which can't be described by any mathematics. So that's the triplet. And that's what makes human beings different, is we can use that outside thinking to understand that I'm an animal which favors my own group, and my animal behavior will indulge in things like war and sex, which are our strongest drives. And when we die, we just become an object to fall over.
Right.
How simple is that?
It's very
Just
simple.
Very simple. So the next lecture, we're going to start giving people more and more of this information. The Great Awakening. That's what it's going to be. And it's going to happen in Hull and spread out.